want to talk about is so Jung had the whole notion of integration, right? Becoming whole, taking all that parts of that and figuring out something. And that's kind of a thing that was being explored within the corner. Was it about 6 or 8 months ago, with parts work and all that type of stuff? It'd be kind of its cousin. And one thing that I've seen, and of course that's really Jordan B. Peterson centric as well. And one thing I have seen is that in my participation in Toastmasters and doing other types of things and doing this type of stuff as well, right? It has made me more whole, right? In the sense of tackling those aspects of me which were blocks to living a fuller life, a more purposeful life. And the more comfortable I've gotten with public speaking, and it has really helped to transform me in ways that I couldn't have linearly plotted, right? So it's a very rich experience. It's perspective changing. It's boosting my participation. And what I've been thinking about is, does Christianity lack the same mechanism to pull me up and to transform me? Because you see, the nice thing about this kind of integration process was that it didn't just stop me in my tracks and go, well, who do you think you are, trying to become a grand old speaker? You should be a bit more humble yourself before the mighty speakers of the world, and just be a good, just do good, right? And I kind of wonder, has Christianity in its current iteration or implementation, or in this current age, failed to pull people like me up because of a fear of excessively boosting the individual? Or has it made a mistake of saying, hey, look to God, don't look to yourself, right? And obviously that's part of it, right? But I want to be pulled up so that when I look to God, I'm in a much more integral position to do so in a richer and more full way. So that's my thought.
All right, that is quite a pitch. Well done, Jeremy. Good pitch. Dale, you are muted. So what would you like to pitch to the group?
I was just last couple of years, I've always been curious about your thought processes on TULIP, mainly two of the pieces, where they differ from the Lutheran Church. I'm not 100% sold on the Lutheran view, but I understand where their viewpoint comes from, and it's just really strange. It's mainly the limited atonement and the irresistible grace type stuff.
Okay. I'm sure Len is listening to that. It's a regular topic on Voices that comes around. So thank you very much, Dale. Mark D. Parker, what would you like to pitch to the group?
Something, maybe it's adjacent to what Jer was talking about. I think we were behind the scenes in the email. I mentioned that the trads might be not around so much because they've given up YouTube for Lent, and it's true. I know a couple, and there's probably many more that I don't know in the corner. But which made me think, well, why are you here, and why am I here? Which goes to what's the point of being a Christian? What's the nature? What's the substance of it? Is it all about a kind of fellowship as consumption, or is it to be here to carry one another's burdens? And so if you're here for ministry, giving up your ministry for Lent doesn't quite compute. If you're here to be entertained or amused or intellectually stimulated, then maybe I can see it. So that's my pitch. And they're not here to defend themselves, the poor bastards. So the vultures are circling.
The vultures are circling. Well done. Well done, Mark D. Parker. Okay, Elliot, as your first appearance on the channel, in the Bible, first words are always important. So what's your pitch for us this morning, Elliot?
I was listening to a lot of your videos as of recently. In fact, I haven't finished one just before I got the link to go here about the lions and the fox culture, and to the dismay of that guy on Twitter who's kind of sick of this conversation. I'm very interested in actually bringing it back up. I'm thinking the way that it's, especially in your Substack, where the AI had a summary of what fox culture and lion culture were. It seems like the TLC and sort of the conversations around here, it feels very like fox culture. You know, it's not very structural. It's sort of like very, you know, a lot of negotiation. Not many people like to. Well, you have a few people, but the general tendency seems to sort of be very friendly and negotiable. And so I guess where could the TLC incorporate more lion culture sort of like features into itself, integrating it in a way, I guess. Yeah, that's my pitch.
Interesting pitch. Okay, Len, welcome. Thank you for signing up and joining us. You've been around the estuary thing. Well, give a little bit of introduction and then give us your pitch.
Yeah, well, I'm you say a colleague of Paul. I'm also a Christian Reformed minister, retired. Well, you aren't retired, obviously. But I'm still working at various things. I'm not regular around the TLC. I really don't, Paul, I'm sorry, I don't listen to the channel all that much. I got an email this morning from you and saying you're doing this. So I haven't got, what the hell, I can do this afternoon. I'll join in. So here I am.
All right. Did you signed up yourself or did someone else sign you up?
I signed up myself.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, but see, the trouble is they were telling me I had to pay.
Oh no! You don't have.
See, I paid my money, but I'm going to cancel it right after.
Yeah, no, you don't have to come onto one of these live streams. You don't have to pay StreamYard.
Gotcha. All right. But I was interested
free.
in what Dale brought up. I'm into that stuff. I like theology a lot. I love to talk about it. I'd love to come into what Dale talked about from a little different angle. I'm more on the Universalist side. So I call myself a Calvinist Universalist. So if you start with Calvin, who believes that God is all-knowing and all-powerful and loves all of creation, then instead of God saying, there's a few people that I'd like to save, the rest of them go to hell. I think that we're forced to say that God is going to choose all of them.
Okay. Oh boy, Len. If there's one thing in the corner that always sets the nerves jingling, it's the Universalist. At second, probably the one after it is the Trinity. So we will go.
I just taught a class actually at Calvin. Well, Calvin, the adult learning program they have there. I taught a class, and astoundingly titled Christian Universalism. I had 150 people sign up. These are people over 65.
Yep.
Very interested in the subject. So
yep. I am not surprised in the least. I think our own corner Unitarian, Sam Tiedemann, very smart man, told me, he says, I think beneath a lot of the conflict in the Christian Reformed Church right now is actually universalism. And I think that's true.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So anyway, but now we've had our pitches and now we point. So Jeremy, what did someone else put on the table that you'd like to point to and say, that's interesting, and why?
I liked Mark's point about the if you're carrying others' burdens and what it means to switch on to switch off. From burdens, and what do you do in that regard? So I'd probably pick that, but I'd like to somehow or other shoehorn in lion culture and universalism as well, as it always must, right? I'd probably pick Marx. I think.
All right, we have one person in our local estuary, and she has a terrible time picking between the things, and it's really bothersome for me because I have to rank order them. That's part of the reason we do the point round. And if she chooses them all, so it's like, I understand that maybe all of these pitches are like your children. You love them all the same. But tell me which one you want to talk about the most right now or something like that. So at least I can rank order them to sort of guide the group into the beginnings of the conversation. Dale, what say you? What would you like to talk about?
I picked Leonard's Universalism because I have no idea. I've never even heard of it. So
okay. Calvinist Universalism. I think, oh boy, yeah, see, the thing is, Len is a retired Christian Reformed minister, and I am not. And especially right now in the denomination,
Paul, you don't have to pick parts. No.
We are a confessionally aware denomination right now. So, okay. So, Mark, what would you like to point to?
I think you can shoehorn in the universalism and the lion culture, fox culture discussion into what Jer and I are talking about too. But I am, just because Nate was so annoyed by your discussion on your videos about lion culture and such, that I can't help but just want to scratch that itch some more, because he seems rather annoyed. I'm not sure why that would be so annoying. Wake me up when the corner has moved on to something else. That's interesting. But yeah, it's because I think it goes to the cultural Christianity discussion, and Christian nationalism to some degree, and which goes to the heart of what it means to be a Christian. And to me, it's like, to me, being a follower of Jesus is to annoy everybody in power, and basically annoy everybody on a fairly regular basis. And so, yeah, I think we can fit it all together, but I definitely don't want to leave out your current content.
Okay.
Stream.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Elliot, what would you like to point to?
I'm really fascinated by both Dale and Leonard's thing about TULIP and Calvinist, Universalism. I'd like to go into this. Me going into this, I go with a little bit of fear and trembling, because chances are most of these people have been reading about this longer than I've been alive, and that's a bit of a scary thought. But I think it'll be really interesting to dive into.
Okay. All right. Another TULIP Calvin Universalist. Len, your pitch is right up there in the competition, but you have to point to something else, and it might actually, the way it works usually is, especially topics like these, the conversation will get around to a lot of them. So it's more about where to begin and how it flows. So Len, what would you like to point to?
Yeah, I'll point to Jer. I was intrigued by what he was talking about in the that sense of how God is calling us and what God is calling us to, and putting yourself forward as opposed to just humbly being service somewhere. That all those questions are really interesting. And I forgot it was Lent. No, I didn't really. But
Len, you'd have gotten yourself in your own brand of church trouble by admitting that.
Yeah. No, I really didn't. But anyway, yeah, I'd be intrigued to talk more about what Jared brought up.
Yeah. I too, I didn't pitch anything because I put out so much content. I feel I put my pitches out all the time, and they usually come up here anyway. But I also was really sort of colonized by Jeremy's topic as well, because I've been doing a lot of thinking on, when we say Christianity, we're talking about a thing. Now, it's a huge thing, and it's a really difficult thing to actually talk about, because actually this kind of gets into a lot of the deeper questions I have about what I think has been sort of a dominant, rather blobbish religion that we've had since the Second World War, of which Hiroshima and Auschwitz have been sacred emblems. And that's been something that I've touched on in my channel recently. And that will probably be something that pushes away the lions and the foxes for a little while, so that Nate Heil can breathe a little bit easier. But with the way Jeremy was talking about it, that really, and I think I saw Len's eyes lighting up there too, because as a pastor, pastors play in theology, pastors play with structure and culture and even politics sometimes. But I think what sort of differentiates pastors from other aspects is we're really interested in people and what's happening inside of them in terms of the transformations and these subtle questions that Jeremy, I think, nicely put on the table. But that sort of presents us with a problem here because of the vote getting. Yeah, we're sort of all over the map. And so I think lion culture, fox culture, Calvinist Universalism, and giving up things for Lent are all high topics too. So let's play. And probably whoever sort of makes a strong speech now will probably win the next 15 minutes.
Well, just from my perspective, I really haven't read the stuff about lion culture, fox culture, so I'm I don't understand so if somebody's going to have to explain a little bit the topic to me, I'm sorry. Yeah.
Well, I've been a number of my videos. In fact, I made a video this morning about the Christian Reformed Church, and this I think will definitely interest you, Len, that what we've seen happening in the culture recently has been a return to lion culture. And this comes from an observation by Pareto, who was an Italian economist, mathematician, political philosopher, sort of at the end of the 19th, beginning of the 20th century, that said, basically, politics is governed by groups of elites. And these elites tend to cycle between lion cultures and fox cultures. Lion cultures are generally more conservative. They're more populist. They're more comfortable with use of power and force to get their way, forcing decisions. Fox cultures are a little bit more evasive, a little bit more egalitarian, a little bit more negotiating to find pragmatic solutions. And I think after the 19th century was heavily a lion culture century, where you had colonial powers unafraid to exert their power even at great cost. And then you'd have what happens in the 20th century. I think everyone, after two exhausting world wars, just sort of wants peace. And after at least the Cold War settles down, everybody sort of is like, well, we'll just let America be the lion, because it's a very foxy lion, and it's sort of tender in terms of its imperial aspirations. It wants all the countries to stay in their nice little packages. But one of the things that we've been seeing, I think, is a swing back towards lionish behavior. And I think we've seen that in the Christian Reformed Church, with now, while the Christian Reformed Church that you and I know, Len, from years ago, was very much about boundary keeping and meeting with the council before you could partake in communion, and very confessionally observant. We went into a period where maybe a few churches would say they practiced open communion, but practically speaking, they were. The church discipline very seldom practiced. Everything was sort of, and now suddenly with these last few synods, everything tightens up again, and we're going to pay attention, and people are going to say yes and no to things. And so just kind of the going back and forth between these cultures. And I think, part of why Nate Heil, when I first started mentioning it, he messaged me very strongly that this is I should not be talking this way. This is not something we should even think about. And Nate, of course, is a Christian anarchist. And so if there's anything sort of against lionism, it's anarchism. And so, but he's also a universalist. So, or sort of it's really hard with Nate, because Nate has such subtle complexities in his own matrix. So, and so I've been looking at that lion those lion impulses and sort of the swing back to that sort of thing. And actually, I was thinking the other day, Len, to sort of cross into the Calvinist universalism. Universalism is fairly lionish too, because just as you said, and I've had the similar thoughts that you had about Calvinism, if people object strongly to the exclusionary aspects of some elements of TULIP, limited atonement, irresistible grace. But if you sort of see God as you've mentioned on Voices a number of times, a number of church fathers have, that lionish nature of God basically says, well, how really will a human will that is having to endure eternity by sharing the same universe with such a God really going to resist forever? And so, but that brings up all kinds of other issues. So, yeah, that's some of the lion culture, fox culture stuff that I've been talking about.
That helps. Thank you.
Yeah.
If I could throw on maybe a different spin on that slightly, would be that one of the things that I think is underappreciated about lion culture is that lion culture could be called progressive, in the sense of it's always moving forward. It's seeking a direction and an expansion, and it's highly energetic. Whereas fox culture is administrative, tactical, bureaucratic. Right? It's IBM. And in that sense, fox culture is highly conservative, but it's conserving that domain, that field of play that it already exists within. And a lion just kind of goes, no, pitch is moving, right?
That's right.
Interesting. Yeah.
I'd be interested, Jeremy, to hear you talk more about your pitch, because your pitch really did capture me. And so I this morning I read Ryan Burge is somebody that I read on Substack very regularly. He's the guy, Religion with Graphs, and he's always doing statistical things. And I'm a believer that statistics is very limited in terms of what it can tell us. But we are, and have been, I think, for a long time. I mean, Gandhi said as much when responding to the very lionish culture of the Raj in India, that he's very intrigued by Jesus, but the system that he saw of Christianity in some ways sort of left him cold. And I heard and correct me if I'm wrong, but I heard in your pitch something that I hear in a lot of people, that Jesus continues to sort of quietly colonize. But a big issue right now, I think, that churches are struggling to keep up with Jesus. I'll say it that way. And when we talk about Christianity,
Yeah. So I would play it into the whole fox and lion thing as well, because like civilizationally, up to about pre first round of globalization, we lived in a very dynamic world, which asked an awful lot of people. It was a world that invited you to be a lion. Whether not in a sense of Napoleon, but a lion in the sense of get up, go to work hard, and then you'll die. Right? It asked everything of you. And in that sense, it had this kind of maximal impact on you. And the church itself didn't necessarily need to worry about that aspect of people's characters, because that was being taken care of by the hardships of society. And what happened in Ireland, and I'll be brief on this, what happened in Ireland was that in the 1860s, the Catholic Church was elevated into a position of power by the British, because it allowed a way to channel in more calm direction some of the anger that was beginning to bubble out into armed conflict. So that Ireland certainly became a fox culture church, and I kind of think that the church has an element of excessive fox culture about it, a type of staticness. And I don't mean liturgy or tradition, because I think these are extremely valuable things, but I think there's a type of staticness about how it's reaching out to people, you know. And if I could just give one example, which I always liked from Zen, was a story about a guy who's talking to his Zen master, and he can't unravel the puzzle that he's been set until he kicks a stone, and upon kicking the stone, it just, you know, drops into a pond or something like that. And at that moment, that's what it took to unlock him. So in the same sense, you know, has the church, the modern church, at least I'm more thinking about the Catholic Church, but, you know, we're all globalized now, right? So I'm at least as influenced by the Protestant world. But does the church have 101 different tricks, in which, not tricks, approaches where it can help me to turn my head, right? Where it can help me to direct myself in the right direction, pulling me forward up as an individual at the same time. So that at the very least, somewhat like a C.S. Lewis or a Jordan Peterson character, that even if I never made it home, I'd be a damn lot better than I was before I went in. And that's kind of part of what I'm thinking about.